Emma was about to give up on everything when she lost her shoes at the worst possible moment. What she didn't know was that showing up barefoot to that interview would change her life in ways she could never imagine. This is a story about courage, second chances, and how sometimes things need to fall apart completely before they can fall perfectly into place. The Seattle rain had a personality of its own, Emma Carter decided, as it drenched her for the third time that morning. It wasn't the gentle romantic rain from movies, no. This was the aggressive, sideways kind that laughed at umbrellas and had a personal vendetta against cheap mascara. She clutched her worn portfolio against her chest, trying to protect the only nice outfit she owned, a thrift store blazer that almost matched her skirt. Almost. The bus had broken down on Aurora Avenue, forcing all passengers to sprint through the downpour to catch the next one. In the chaos, someone had stepped on her heel, and her only pair of professional shoes, already held together by hope and superglue, had literally fallen apart in her hands. Now standing outside the gleaming glass tower of Mitchell Tech Solutions in downtown Seattle, barefoot and dripping on the polished sidewalk, Emma faced a choice: go home or walk into the most important interview of her life, looking like a drowned rat who'd lost a fight with a puddle. She checked her phone. 9:47 a.m. The interview was at 10:01 a.m. sharp. "Okay, universe," she whispered to herself, wringing water from her blazer sleeve. "You've had your fun. Can we please have a redemption arc now?" A businessman walking past gave her a wide berth, eyeing her muddy bare feet with concern. Emma couldn't blame him. She looked like she'd just escaped from somewhere and was possibly dangerous. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had a degree in computer science from a community college, had taught herself 3 programming languages, and could debug code in her sleep. But right now, she looked like someone who needed directions to the nearest shelter. The lobby of Mitchell Tech Solutions was everything Emma wasn't. Pristine, expensive, and intimidatingly perfect. Her wet feet squeaked against the marble floor as she approached the reception desk, leaving small puddles in her wake. The receptionist, a polished woman named Patricia according to her nameplate, looked up from her computer and froze, her professional smile flickering like a faulty connection. I have an interview," Emma managed, trying to squeeze water from her hair discreetly. It didn't work. A small puddle formed at her feet. "Emma Carter, for the junior developer position." Patricia's eyes traveled slowly from Emma's face to her bare, muddy feet, then back up again. To her credit, she recovered quickly. "Of course, Miss Carter. You're early. Please have a seat. Would you like a towel? Or several towels?" "That would be amazing, thank you," Emma said, grateful for the woman's professionalism despite the obvious shock. The waiting area offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond. On a clear day, it would have been breathtaking. Today it was just grey on grey, with the Space Needle barely visible through the mist. Emma sat gingerly on the edge of a designer chair, trying to minimize her contact with the expensive fabric. Around her, the other candidates began to arrive. 20 women, according to the email she'd received. Emma counted them as they checked in, each one more polished than the last. Designer suits, perfect hair, shoes. They all had shoes. Beautiful, dry, intact shoes. A woman with immaculate blonde hair and a briefcase that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent sat down 2 chairs away, then immediately moved 3 chairs further when she noticed Emma's appearance. "Rough morning?" another candidate asked. She was African-American, about Emma's age, with kind eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. "You could say that," Emma replied, accepting a stack of towels from Patricia. "Bus breakdown, lost my shoes in the evacuation, and I'm pretty sure I have seaweed in my hair." The woman laughed. "I'm Sarah Williams, and for what it's worth, you're braver than I am. I would have gone home." Emma Carter. "And I probably should have, but I've been applying for 6 months. This is my first real interview." 6 months? Sarah's eyes widened. "Girl, you must want this bad. I'm living in a basement apartment in Rainier Valley, with 3 roommates and a raccoon that comes through a hole in the wall every Tuesday," Emma said, wringing out her blazer into a towel. "Bad doesn't begin to cover it." Sarah burst into laughter, causing several other candidates to look over disapprovingly. The morning dragged on as candidates were called one by one into the interview room. Each emerged looking either hopeful or dejected, their fates sealed behind practiced poker faces. Emma dried off as best she could, but there was no fixing the Barefoot situation. She'd tried using the towels as makeshift shoes, but they just made her look even more ridiculous. By 11:30, only 5 candidates remained, including Emma and Sarah. Her stomach growled audibly, reminding her that she'd skipped breakfast to afford the bus fare. Emma Carter, a tall man in his 30s, emerged from the hallway. "Mr. Mitchell will see you now." Emma stood, took a deep breath, and padded barefoot down the hallway, her wet feet leaving prints on the hardwood floor. She could feel the man's eyes on her, judging, wondering. The door at the end opened into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And there, standing with his back to her, hands in his pockets as he gazed out at the rain, was James Mitchell. Emma had Googled him, of course. 35 years old, founded Mitchell Tech Solutions at 25, Forbes 30 under 30, known for his innovative approach to software development and his notorious perfectionism. The photos online showed a handsome man with dark hair and intense blue eyes that seemed to see through screens and into code itself. But photos didn't capture presence. As he turned to face her, Emma felt the room shift somehow. He was tall, 6'2" at least, with the kind of casual elegance that came from custom-tailored suits and confidence earned through success. His eyes swept over her, the wet hair, the mismatched outfit, the bare muddy feet. And something flickered across his face. Surprise? Amusement? Disappointment? "Miss Carter," he said, his voice deep and measured. "You're wet." "Yes, sir," Emma replied, forcing herself to stand straight despite wanting to melt into the floor. "There was a situation with the bus, and then another situation with my shoes, and possibly a third situation with a puddle, though at that point I'd stopped counting." The corner of his mouth twitched. "I see. And you decided to come anyway?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Emma could have given a safe answer, something about determination or not wanting to waste the opportunity. But standing there, dripping and barefoot in front of this man who probably had never had a bad day in his life, something in her snapped. "Because I'm tired of being invisible," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm tired of algorithms rejecting my resume before human eyes see it. I'm tired of being told I'm not qualified because I went to community college instead of MIT. And I'm tired of living with a raccoon named Steve who steals my Pop-Tarts every Tuesday. So yes, I lost my shoes. Yes, I look like I just escaped from a car wash. But I can code circles around half the people in this building, and I'm not going to let a pair of broken shoes stop me from proving it." Silence filled the room, broken only by the rain against the windows. James Mitchell stared at her, his expression unreadable. Emma's heart hammered in her chest. She'd just torpedoed her chances. She'd let her frustration speak instead of her brain. Then James Mitchell did something unexpected. He laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a real genuine laugh that transformed his serious face into something younger, lighter. He walked to his desk, pressed a button on his phone and said, "Patricia, please send the remaining candidates home. We've found our junior developer." Emma's brain short-circuited. What?" James turned back to her, his blue eyes bright with something that looked like excitement. "You're hired, Miss Carter, though we should probably get you some shoes first, and maybe an umbrella. Apparently, Seattle has weather. But you haven't even asked me about my skills or my experience, or your resume tells me you taught yourself Python, Java, and C++ while working 2 jobs. Your GitHub portfolio shows projects with clean, elegant code. And your answer just now tells me you have something that can't be taught in any school or boot camp. Genuine hunger, and the courage to show up even when everything's falling apart." He extended his hand. "Welcome to Mitchell Tech Solutions, Miss Carter. Let's see what you can do when you're not fighting the elements." Emma shook his hand, still stunned, feeling the firm warmth of his grip. His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary, and something passed between them. Recognition, curiosity, the beginning of something neither of them could name yet. As she left his office, feet still bare but heart soaring, Emma Carter had no idea that accepting this job would change everything, that the perfectionist CEO with the kind eyes would become the center of her world, that Seattle's rain would witness both heartbreak and healing in the months to come. But for now, as she floated past Sarah Williams, who whispered, "Did you get it?" And Emma nodded with tears in her eyes. All she knew was that sometimes the worst first impressions led to the best new beginnings, even if you had to make them barefoot. Emma's first day at Mitchell Tech Solutions began with a problem. She still didn't have proper shoes. Sarah Williams, who'd been hired for a marketing position after her own interview, had become an instant ally. She'd texted Emma the night before, "Emergency shopping trip, Pike Place Market 8 a.m., don't argue." Now, as they wove through the famous market's crowded aisles, dodging tourists and the flying fish at Pike Place Fish Market, Emma felt the first stirrings of something she hadn't experienced in years, hope mixed with belonging. "You really don't have to do this," Emma protested, as Sarah dragged her toward a shoe vendor tucked between a flower stall and a craftsman selling handmade jewelry. "Girl, you showed up barefoot and still got the job. You're my hero. The least I can do is make sure you don't repeat the performance." Sarah held up a pair of simple black flats. "Besides, I have a feeling we're going to be friends. And friends don't let friends meet the CEO barefoot twice." The shoes cost $40, a fortune for Emma, but Sarah insisted on splitting it. "Consider it an investment in our future friendship," she said with a grin that made arguing impossible. They grabbed coffee at the original Starbucks, fighting the tourist crowds for a spot at the counter. The rich aroma of roasted beans filled the air, mixing with the salt smell from Elliott Bay and the rain that had finally stopped, leaving Seattle sparkling and clean. "So," Sarah said, sipping her latte, "what's your read on Mr. Mitchell?" Emma wrapped her hands around her cup, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers. "Honestly, I'm not sure. He's intense. But there was this moment when he laughed, and it was like seeing a completely different person. The internet says he's a genius and a workaholic, also single. Very, very single." Sarah waggled her eyebrows. "Stop it," Emma laughed, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "He's my boss. That's a complication I definitely don't need. I'm just saying, the way you described him looking at you, he was looking at my muddy feet and wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake." They arrived at the Mitchell Tech building at 8:45 a.m., giving Emma 15 minutes to spare. The lobby felt different now, less intimidating, more like a threshold to possibility. Patricia at the reception desk smiled warmly when she saw Emma. "Miss Carter, lovely to see you again, with shoes this time." Her eyes twinkled. "Mr. Mitchell asked me to show you to your desk. He also left something for you." Emma's workspace was in an open floor plan on the 14th floor, with a view of the Space Needle in the distance. The desk was standard issue, computer, monitor, keyboard, but sitting next to the monitor was a small potted succulent with a note written in confident slanted handwriting. "Every new beginning needs something that's hard to kill. Welcome to the team, J.M." Emma felt something flutter in her chest. She quickly pushed the feeling down. Professional. This was professional. "He does that for all new hires," said a voice behind her. Emma turned to find a woman in her 40s with red hair and sharp green eyes. "I'm Rachel Thompson, lead developer. You'll be on my team." "Emma Carter, thank you for having me." Rachel's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Let's be clear about something, Emma. I don't know what you did to impress James in that interview, but here, you'll need to prove yourself with code, not charm. Understood?" The warmth Emma had been feeling evaporated. "Understood. Good. We have a team meeting in 10 minutes. Conference room B. Don't be late." Rachel walked away, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Emma sank into her chair, staring at the succulent. So this was how it would be. She'd have to work twice as hard to prove she deserved to be here. The morning passed in a blur of introductions, system passwords, and software installations. The development team consisted of 12 people, mostly men in their 30s and 40s, who regarded Emma with polite curiosity. Only one person seemed genuinely friendly, Marcus Chen, a developer around her age with glasses and a Star Wars t-shirt under his blazer. "Don't let Rachel intimidate you," Marcus whispered during a bathroom break. "She's been here since the beginning. Very protective of James, Mr. Mitchell. Rumor is she wanted the CTO position, but he hired someone from outside instead. So she sees me as another outsider? Probably. But hey, you've got something the rest of us don't. You made the boss laugh. According to Patricia, that never happens." At noon, Emma was deep in code, trying to understand the company's proprietary framework, when a shadow fell across her desk. She looked up to find James Mitchell standing there, holding 2 cups from a local coffee shop called Zeitgeist Coffee. "Miss Carter, I noticed you didn't take a lunch break." Emma's heart did something complicated. "Oh, I just wanted to get familiar with the systems." "Admirable, but unnecessary on your first day." He set 1 cup on her desk. "Caramel macchiato. Patricia mentioned you ordered one in the lobby this morning. I took a calculated guess." "You didn't have to." "I'm aware. I wanted to." He pulled up a chair, sitting down in a way that made the gesture seem casual, though Emma noticed several heads turning their way across the open office. "How's your first day treating you?" "Good. Everyone's been welcoming." The lie felt necessary. James's blue eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "Rachel gave you the speech, didn't she?" Emma blinked. "What speech?" "The prove yourself with code, not charm speech. She gives it to anyone she perceives as having an unfair advantage." He took a sip of his coffee. "For what it's worth, I don't hire people based on charm. I hire them based on potential, and you have it in abundance." "Thank you, sir." "James," he corrected. "In this office, we're fairly informal. Sir makes me feel like I should be wearing a powdered wig and signing declarations." Emma laughed despite herself. "Okay, James, thank you." He stood, but lingered for a moment. "That succulent is a Haworthia. It needs water once every 2 weeks and indirect light. If you can keep it alive for a month, I'll know you can handle deadlines." "Is that the actual test?" "No," he said, his expression softening into something almost like a smile. "The actual test is whether you'll tell me when you're struggling instead of drowning quietly. I value honesty over perfection, Emma. Remember that." As he walked away, Emma became acutely aware of the stares from her co-workers. Rachel stood by the coffee station, her expression unreadable but her jaw tight. Marcus gave Emma a thumbs up. Sarah, passing by on her way to the marketing department, mouthed, "Oh my God," with exaggerated enthusiasm. Emma turned back to her screen, her face burning. The caramel macchiato sat next to the succulent, both gifts from a man who was technically her boss, but felt like something else entirely, something dangerous and thrilling, and completely off limits. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Girl, we need to talk." But before Emma could respond, her computer pinged with a new assignment, a real project, code that needed debugging for a client presentation next week. Rachel's name was CC'd on the email with a note, "Let's see what you can do." Emma cracked her knuckles, opened the files, and dove in. If she couldn't control the complicated feelings brewing in her chest, she could at least control this. She could prove that James Mitchell's faith in her wasn't misplaced, even if keeping that faith meant keeping her distance from the man who'd given it to her. The afternoon rain started again, drumming against the windows as Emma worked, the Seattle soundtrack to her new beginning. Somewhere across the office, James was in a meeting, visible through glass walls, animated as he presented something on a screen. She caught herself watching him, the way his hands moved when he spoke, the intensity in his eyes. Emma forced her gaze back to her code. Professional. This had to stay professional. But Seattle rain had a way of wearing down even the strongest resolutions, one drop at a time. And neither Emma nor James knew that the real storm was just beginning. 3 weeks into her new job, Emma had learned several important things about working at Mitchell Tech Solutions. 1. Rachel Thompson watched her like a hawk watching a particularly suspicious mouse. 2. Marcus Chen made the best recommendations for cheap lunch spots in Capitol Hill. 3. James Mitchell worked until at least 9 p.m. every single night. And 4. She was completely, hopelessly, inappropriately falling for her boss. The last realization hit her on a Thursday evening as she sat alone in the office, debugging code that had stumped 3 senior developers. The rain hammered against the windows, because of course it did. This was Seattle, and her eyes burned from staring at the screen for 12 hours straight. "You're still here." Emma jumped, nearly knocking over her now cold coffee. James stood in the doorway of the main office, his tie loosened and the top button of his shirt undone. He looked tired, human, and unfairly attractive. "I'm so close to solving this," Emma said, gesturing at her screen. "The client presentation is tomorrow, and I just need to find why the authentication module keeps timing out." James walked over, leaning down to look at her screen. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. "May I?" Emma slid her chair back, and James took her place, his fingers flying over the keyboard. She watched over his shoulder as he navigated through the code, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There," he said after 2 minutes. "Line 247. You're calling the validation function before the token refresh completes. It's a race condition." Emma leaned closer, seeing it immediately now that he'd pointed it out. "Oh my God, I've been staring at this for hours." Fresh eyes help. "Also, I wrote this particular module 3 years ago, when I was convinced I was smarter than I actually was." He made the correction, ran the test, and the green success message flashed on screen. "There, crisis averted." "Thank you," Emma breathed. "Rachel would have killed me if I didn't have this ready." James stood, stretching. Emma noticed the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders and immediately forced herself to look away. "Rachel's standards are high because mine are higher, but you've exceeded both in these 3 weeks." He glanced at his watch. "It's nearly 10. Have you eaten?" "I had a granola bar around 3. "That's not dinner. Come on." "Come on, where?" "There's a faux place on Capitol Hill that stays open late. You've been working yourself to exhaustion trying to prove something you've already proven. The least I can do is feed you." Emma knew she should say no, this was crossing lines, but her stomach growled audibly, and James smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face, and she found herself nodding. 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other in a tiny Vietnamese restaurant called Pho Cyclo, steam rising from bowls of fragrant broth. The place was nearly empty, just a couple of students in the corner and an elderly man reading a newspaper. "This is going to sound terrible," Emma said, wrapping her cold hands around the warm bowl, "but this is the best meal I've had in months." James looked up from his own bowl, concern flickering across his face. "Emma, if you're struggling financially—" No, she said quickly. "I mean, yes, I'm on a budget, but I'm managing. It's just, I've been eating a lot of instant ramen. This is actual food made by someone who understands flavor. The instant ramen life. I remember it well." Emma laughed. "Somehow I doubt you've ever eaten instant ramen. You'd be surprised." James took a sip of his tea. "I started this company in a studio apartment in Fremont with $2,000 in savings and a dream that was probably more delusion than vision. I ate instant ramen for breakfast, lunch and dinner for 6 months straight. Sometimes I still can't look at those little square packages without feeling mildly nauseous." Emma stared at him, seeing something new in his carefully composed exterior. "I didn't know that. Most people don't. The Forbes articles like to skip over the part where I was one missed rent payment away from moving back to my mother's house in Spokane." He smiled, but it was tinged with old pain. Success looks inevitable in retrospect. Living through it feels like drowning slowly. "Is that why you hired me?" The question escaped before Emma could stop it. "Because you saw yourself in the drowning girl with no shoes?" James was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes studying her with that intensity that made her feel like he could see through all her defenses. "I hired you because when most people are drowning, they make excuses or give up. You showed up anyway, that's rarer than you think." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Emma couldn't name. She broke eye contact first, focusing on her foe like it held the secrets of the universe. "Can I ask you something?" James said. "Sure." "Why software development? You clearly have the aptitude for it, but there's a passion there that goes beyond just being good at something." Emma twirled noodles around her chopsticks, considering. "When I was 12, my dad left. Just walked out one day and never came back. My mom worked 3 jobs trying to keep us afloat, and I spent a lot of time alone. I found this old laptop at a garage sale for $10, and I taught myself to code from library books and YouTube videos." She paused, surprised at how easy it was to tell him this. "In code, everything makes sense. If something's broken, there's a logical reason. You can fix it. You're not powerless. I like that feeling." "Control in chaos," James said softly. "Exactly. I understand that more than you know." He looked out the window at the rain-slicked street, neon signs reflecting in puddles. "My father died when I was 19. Heart attack. One day he was lecturing me about business strategy. The next he was gone. I threw myself into building this company partly to honor him, partly to avoid dealing with the grief." Emma felt her chest tighten. Did it work? The avoiding? Not even a little bit. James's smile was sad. Grief is patient. It waits until you've run out of distractions, and then it hits you all at once. I learned that the hard way. They finished their meal in comfortable silence, the kind that felt intimate rather than awkward. When James paid the bill, despite Emma's protests, he waved her off. You can buy next time. Next time. The words hung in the air between them as they walked back to James's car, a surprisingly modest Toyota hybrid. I expected something flashier, Emma admitted as he opened the passenger door for her. I save my flashiness for code architecture, he replied with a hint of humor. The drive to Rainier Valley took 20 minutes through empty Seattle streets, rain creating rivers in the gutters. Emma directed him to her building, a rundown complex that looked even worse under the streetlights. This is me, she said, suddenly embarrassed by the peeling paint and the broken security gate. James put the car in park, but didn't say anything about the neighborhood. Emma, I want you to know something. You don't have to work 12-hour days to prove yourself. You've already shown me and everyone else what you're capable of. Rachel doesn't think so. Rachel is protecting herself. She sees your potential and it scares her. He turned to face her, his expression serious. But pushing yourself to exhaustion isn't sustainable. Trust me, I've tried. It nearly cost me everything. What do you mean? James hesitated, then said quietly, 4 years ago I worked myself into a hospital. Exhaustion, they called it. My body literally shut down because I refused to acknowledge I was human and had limits. His hands gripped the steering wheel. I don't want to see that happen to you. Emma felt something shift in her chest, a tenderness toward this man who seemed to have everything but carried invisible scars. Thank you for telling me that, and for dinner, and for the ride. Any time. He smiled, and Emma knew she was in trouble because that smile did things to her heartbeat that were decidedly unprofessional. She climbed out of the car, then leaned back in. James? That code you wrote 3 years ago? The part you said was you being too smart, it was actually brilliant. Just needed a small adjustment. His eyes lit up with something that looked like surprise mixed with pleasure. Good night, Emma. Good night. Emma walked to her building, feeling his eyes on her until she was safely inside. When she turned back, his car was still there, waiting until the security door closed behind her. In her tiny basement apartment, with the sound of rain through the high window and her roommate's music bleeding through the thin walls, Emma lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. She was falling for James Mitchell. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt inevitable, like watching the rain in Seattle. You could see it coming, you knew it would complicate things, but there was something beautiful in the surrender. Tomorrow, she would be professional. Tomorrow, she would remember all the reasons why this was a terrible idea. But tonight, in the dark with rain drumming overhead, she let herself imagine what might happen if the impossible became possible. If the CEO and the girl who'd shown up barefoot could find a way to meet in the middle, even if Seattle and Rachel Thompson had other plans. The client presentation was a triumph. Emma's code ran flawlessly, the authentication module worked perfectly, and the executives from Harrison Industries signed a contract extension worth $2 million. James praised the entire team, but his eyes found Emma's across the conference room, holding for just a moment too long. Rachel noticed. Of course she did. Nice work, Carter, Rachel said as everyone filed out, her tone pleasant but her eyes cold. Though I'm sure having private debugging sessions with the CEO helps. Emma felt her stomach drop. It wasn't like that. I was stuck, and James, Mr. Mitchell, happened to be working late. I'm sure. Rachel's smile didn't reach her eyes. Word of advice? In this industry, perception matters as much as performance. You might want to be careful about appearances. Sarah found Emma in the bathroom 10 minutes later, staring at her reflection in the mirror and trying not to cry. Hey, what happened? Sarah put a hand on Emma's shoulder. Rachel basically accused me of sleeping my way to success. That witch! Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. Everyone knows you've been killing it. You rewrote half the back-end infrastructure in 3 weeks. That has nothing to do with James. But she's right about one thing, Emma said quietly. People are talking. I can feel it. The way they look at me when James speaks to me or when he brings me coffee. So what? Let them talk. You haven't done anything wrong. Not yet, Emma whispered. But Sarah, I think about him constantly. When I'm working, I'm hoping he'll stop by my desk. When I go home, I replay every conversation. This morning I spent 20 minutes picking out an outfit because I wanted him to notice. She turned to her friend, tears threatening. I'm becoming the cliché everyone thinks I already am. Sarah pulled her into a hug. First of all, having feelings for someone doesn't make you a cliché. It makes you human. Second, from what I've seen, he's just as gone for you. That makes it worse, not better. Why? Because he's my boss, Sarah. There's a power dynamic. Even if we both wanted something to happen, which is insane to even consider, it could ruin everything. My job, my reputation, his company. Sarah was quiet for a moment. So what are you going to do? Create distance, be professional, forget that dinner ever happened. Emma wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders. I came here to build a career, not to fall for the CEO. The resolution lasted exactly 4 hours. Emma was leaving the building at 6 p.m., determined to maintain normal working hours, when she literally ran into James in the lobby. He caught her arms to steady her, and the touch sent electricity through her entire body. Leaving at a reasonable hour, he observed with approval. I'm impressed. Taking your advice about sustainability, she managed, acutely aware that he hadn't let go of her arms yet. I'm glad. He released her, and she immediately missed the contact. Emma, I wanted to thank you again for your work on the Harrison project. You saved us. Just doing my job. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Right. Your job. He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Are you free Saturday? Emma's heart stopped. Saturday? The company is sponsoring a booth at the Seattle Tech Summit. I usually skip these events, but I thought, if you were interested in networking, it might be valuable for your career. It was professional, completely professional, so why did it feel like something else? I don't really have anything appropriate to wear to something like that, Emma admitted. It's casual. Tech people aren't known for their fashion sense. His lips quirked. Though you might want to bring shoes this time. Emma laughed despite herself. I'll never live that down, will I? Not a chance. His smile faded, replaced by something more intense. Emma, Mr. Mitchell, Patricia called from the reception desk. Your 7 o'clock is here early. The moment shattered. James stepped back, his professional mask sliding into place. Saturday, 10 a.m. I'll send you the details. Emma nodded and fled before she could do something stupid, like admit she'd cancel any plans to spend time with him. Saturday arrived wrapped in typical Seattle gray, but the convention center buzzed with energy. Emma had borrowed a blazer from Sarah and actually felt put together for once. She found James at the Mitchell Tech booth, looking unfairly good in jeans and a company polo that somehow made him more attractive, not less. You came, he said, and the relief in his voice made her chest ache. You invited your employee to a work event. Of course I came. Right, work event. Something in his tone suggested he was as confused about the lines they were drawing as she was. The morning passed in a blur of demonstrations and conversations with other developers. James introduced her to everyone as our brilliant junior developer who's already revolutionizing our infrastructure. His pride in her work was evident, and Emma found herself standing a little straighter. During a lunch break, they grabbed sandwiches from a food truck outside and sat on a bench overlooking Elliott Bay. The Space Needle rose in the distance, and ferries cut white paths through the grey water. Can I ask you something personal? Emma said, watching a seagull fight over a French fry. Always. Why did you really hire me? The honest reason. James was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember what you said in the interview? About being tired of being invisible? Unfortunately, yes, I'm pretty sure I also said something about a raccoon named Steve. He smiled. You did, but that first part, about being invisible, it hit me because I understood it. Not in the same way, obviously. I've been very visible for the past 10 years, but there's an invisibility that comes with success, too. People see the CEO, the money, the achievements. They don't see the person. He turned to face her. But when you walked into my office drenched and barefoot and completely unapologetic about it, I saw someone real, someone brave, and I realized I'd been surrounding myself with people who were afraid to be human around me. Emma's breath caught. James, I know this is complicated, he continued. I know there are rules and power dynamics and 100 reasons why I shouldn't be telling you this. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that first day. Not just about your work, which is exceptional, but about you. The way you laugh, the way you approach problems, the way you showed up when everything was falling apart. This is a terrible idea, Emma whispered, but she didn't move away. Probably the worst I've ever had. You're my boss. I'm aware. People already think. I don't care what people think. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. But I care what you think. I care if this makes you uncomfortable, or if I'm being inappropriate, or if I'm completely misreading everything. Emma looked up at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, and something inside her cracked. You're not misreading anything, that's the problem. Emma! Her phone rang, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen. Marcus Chen. I should take this. James nodded, pulling back. The distance felt like a physical loss. Marcus, what's wrong? Emma, thank God, there's been a breach. Someone accessed our client database from inside the company network. Rachel found it 20 minutes ago. She's saying... Marcus hesitated. She's saying the access came from your credentials. The world tilted. That's impossible. I'm at the convention center. I haven't been near my computer since yesterday. I know, but the logs show your username and password. They're doing a full investigation. Rachel's calling for your termination. Emma looked at James, who'd gone very still, clearly hearing enough to understand something was wrong. I'll be right there, she said, hanging up. What happened? James asked. Someone used my credentials to access confidential data. They're saying it was me. Her voice shook. James, I didn't do this. I would never... I know. He was already moving, pulling out his phone. Come on. We need to get back to the office and figure out what really happened. As they rushed to his car, Emma felt the fragile thing between them shifting, reshaping under crisis. Whatever was building between them would have to wait, because someone had just tried to destroy her career before it even began, and Emma had a sinking feeling she knew exactly who was behind it. The conference room felt like a courtroom. Rachel sat at one end of the table, arms crossed, her expression triumphant. Marcus stood by the window looking miserable. The IT security chief, David Park, had his laptop open, displaying logs that supposedly proved Emma's guilt. Emma sat across from them all, James beside her in a show of solidarity that probably made everything worse. The evidence is clear, Rachel said, her voice cool and professional. At 9:47 a.m. this morning, someone using Emma's credentials accessed our client database and downloaded confidential information including contract details, pricing structures, and proprietary code. The access came from her workstation. I was at the convention center at 9:47, Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. James can confirm that. Convenient, Rachel said, the CEO providing an alibi. James's jaw tightened. Rachel, that's enough. Emma's been with me since 9:30 this morning. There's no way she could have physically been at her desk. Then someone has her password, David interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. Emma, have you shared your credentials with anyone? Of course not. Left your password written down anywhere? On a post-it note, in a document? No. I memorized it the first day. Rachel leaned forward. Or maybe you set up a scheduled script to run at that time, giving yourself an alibi. That's absurd, James said sharply. Emma doesn't have the access privileges to set up automated scripts on the main server. She could have asked someone with higher privileges. Rachel's eyes gleamed. Someone who's been spending a lot of private time with her lately. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Emma felt her face burn with humiliation and rage. You're suggesting I helped her commit corporate espionage? James's voice was dangerously quiet. I'm suggesting that personal relationships can cloud judgment. My judgment is perfectly clear, Rachel, and right now I'm judging that your personal bias against Emma is preventing you from conducting an actual investigation. Rachel's face flushed. Personal bias? I'm the only one here being objective. You've been fawning over her since day one, giving her special treatment, private coaching sessions. Stop! Emma stood up, her hands shaking but her voice strong. Everyone in this room knows what's really happening here. Rachel, you've resented me from the moment I was hired. I get it. I'm young, I'm inexperienced, and I got this job in an unconventional way. But I have worked my ass off every single day to prove I belong here. I stayed late, came in early, rewrote infrastructure that was broken and delivered results. And got caught stealing data, Rachel shot back. I didn't steal anything. Emma's voice cracked. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because you've already decided I'm guilty. You were looking for any excuse to get rid of me, and someone just handed you one. Emma! James reached for her arm, but she pulled away. No, I'm done defending myself to people who've already made up their minds. She looked at David. I want a full forensic audit of my workstation. Check my browser history, my file access logs, everything. I have nothing to hide. David nodded slowly. That's actually a good idea. Give me a few hours to run a complete analysis. Fine, Rachel said, but until this is resolved, Emma should be suspended. Absolutely not, James said flatly. James, you can't let your personal feelings. This has nothing to do with feelings and everything to do with due process. We don't suspend people based on accusations. We investigate, find facts, and then make decisions. He stood, his presence commanding the room. David, run your audit. Rachel, you're off this case. Your bias is too obvious. I'll handle the investigation personally with HR and David. Everyone else, this meeting is over. Rachel's face went white with fury. You're making a mistake. Then it's mine to make. Dismissed. After Rachel stormed out and David left to run his analysis, Emma and James stood alone in the conference room. The Seattle skyline stretched behind them, grey and indifferent to their crisis. Thank you, Emma said quietly. But you shouldn't have done that. You just confirmed everything Rachel accused us of, that you're protecting me because of whatever this is between us. I'm protecting you because you're innocent. You don't know that. Not for certain. James turned to face her fully. Yes, I do. I know it the same way I know that coffee tastes better in the morning, that code is poetry, and that Seattle's rain is relentless. Some things you just know, Emma. That's not logic. That's faith. Sometimes faith is all we have. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I meant what I said at the convention center, every word. And if believing in you costs me credibility or makes people question my judgment, then so be it. You're worth it. Emma felt tears threatening. What if they're right? What if I'm just a distraction? What if I'm ruining everything you've built? You're not ruining anything. You're making me remember why I built it in the first place. He reached up, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. When my father died, I threw myself into this company because I was afraid to feel anything. I've spent 10 years being the perfect CEO, making the right decisions, keeping everyone at arm's length. And then you showed up barefoot and real and completely unimpressed by any of it. I was impressed. I was just too wet to show it properly. He smiled. You reminded me that life is messy and unpredictable, and that's not something to fix, it's something to embrace. James, even if this gets resolved, we can't... I know all the reasons why this is complicated. But Emma, I'm tired of living in the safe zone. I'm tired of being lonely in a crowded office. I'm tired of pretending that what I feel for you is just professional respect. Emma's heart hammered in her chest. What are you saying? I'm saying that when this is over, when we prove you're innocent and deal with whoever actually did this, I want to take you on a real date. Not a work event, not a late-night faux run that we pretend is just feeding a colleague. An actual date where I pick you up and take you somewhere nice and we see what this could be, without all the complications. And if we can't prove I'm innocent, we will. But if we can't, then I'll follow you to whatever job you get next and wait until you're ready to give me a chance, he said simply. Because Emma Carter, you are worth waiting for. Before she could respond, David burst back into the conference room, his laptop in hand and excitement on his face. I found something, he said breathlessly. Emma, you're going to want to see this. They crowded around his laptop as he pulled up logs and file directories. Okay, so the access definitely came from Emma's workstation at 9:47 a.m. But here's the interesting part. At 9:23 a.m., someone physically logged into Emma's computer from the office. How do you know it was physical? James asked. Because they had to bypass the biometric scanner. Emma's workstation requires both a password and a fingerprint to wake from sleep mode. Someone used her password, but overrode the fingerprint requirement using an admin command that only senior developers have access to. Emma's mind raced. Can you tell who used the admin override? David pulled up another log, and his expression went grim. The override command came from Rachel Thompson's credentials. Silence filled the room. "Rachel framed me?" Emma whispered. "It looks that way," David confirmed. "She must have gotten your password somehow. Maybe shoulder surfing when you typed it, or maybe she has keylogging software we don't know about. Then this morning, she used her admin access to log into your machine and download the data, making it look like you did it." James's expression had gone cold. "Why would she do this?" "Because she wants Emma gone," Marcus said from the doorway. They all turned to find him standing there, looking guilty. "I'm sorry, I overheard. But Rachel's been vocal about Emma being a diversity hire, who doesn't deserve to be here. She's been trying to find ways to discredit her for weeks." "That's not just professional disagreement," Emma said slowly. "That's sabotage. She could have destroyed my entire career." James pulled out his phone. "David, send me those logs. I want everything documented. Marcus, get HR on the line. And Emma—" He turned to her, his eyes fierce with protective anger. "I need you to trust me to handle this correctly. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief, anger, and something deeper. Gratitude that someone was finally fighting for her instead of against her. "Good," James said, "because Rachel Thompson is about to learn that trying to destroy someone I care about is the worst career decision she could have made." The words, "someone I care about," echoed in Emma's mind as James strode out to deal with the situation. Sarah appeared in the doorway moments later, pulling Emma into a fierce hug. "I heard," she said. "You okay?" "I think so. It's just—" Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "3 weeks ago, I was broke and barefoot. Now I'm at the center of corporate drama, and the CEO just basically declared war on my behalf. And you're in love with him," Sarah added gently. Emma didn't deny it. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to everyone with functioning eyes," Sarah smiled. "But Emma, he looks at you the same way. Whatever happens with Rachel, you two need to figure out what you're going to do about that." Through the glass walls of the conference room, Emma could see James in his office, his posture rigid with controlled fury as he spoke on the phone. Even in crisis, he was fighting for her, believing in her, seeing her as more than just another employee. And Emma realized that regardless of how complicated it would be, regardless of what people would say or think, she wanted that date. She wanted to see where this connection could go when they weren't constantly navigating professional boundaries and office politics. She wanted to choose the messy, unpredictable, beautiful possibility of loving James Mitchell, even if Seattle's rain and its corporate drama had other plans. But first, they had to deal with Rachel. And Emma had a feeling that particular storm was just beginning. Rachel Thompson's termination took less than an hour. Emma wasn't present for it. James insisted she go home and rest, but Marcus texted her the details. Rachel had denied everything at first, then tried to claim she was protecting the company from Emma's obvious manipulation of the CEO. When faced with irrefutable digital evidence, she'd threatened legal action, then finally left the building escorted by security. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Emma sat in her basement apartment listening to rain drum against the high window and feeling oddly hollow. Her phone buzzed. "James, can I see you tonight? I know you probably need space, but I'd really like to talk. No pressure." Emma stared at the message for a long moment, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Everything had changed today. The crisis had stripped away all their careful professional distance, leaving them exposed. There was no going back to polite colleague interactions now. She typed, "I'm home, fair warning, the apartment is tiny and there's a raccoon situation on Tuesdays. It's Saturday, I'll risk it. Send me your address." 30 minutes later, Emma heard a knock on her door. She'd changed out of her blazer into jeans and a sweater, left her hair down, and tried to make her apartment look less like a storage unit for broken dreams. It hadn't worked. James stood in her doorway holding a bag from Paseo, the Cuban sandwich place in Fremont. "I brought food. Thought you might not have eaten." "You thought right." Emma stepped aside to let him in, acutely aware of how small her space was. Basically a room with a kitchenette, a bathroom the size of a closet, and a mattress on the floor. "Sorry about everything." James looked around and Emma braced for pity. Instead, he smiled. "This reminds me of my first apartment. Though yours has better water pressure, probably. Mine had a leak that the landlord refused to fix for 8 months. They sat on her mattress because there was literally nowhere else to sit, eating Cuban sandwiches and drinking the beer James had also brought. The rain created a steady percussion against the window, Seattle's lullaby. "I'm sorry you had to fire Rachel because of me," Emma said finally. "I didn't fire her because of you. I fired her because she committed fraud and tried to destroy someone's career." James set down his sandwich, turning to face her. "Emma, you need to understand something. Rachel's been a problem for years. She's brilliant at her job, but she's also territorial, manipulative, and has driven away more talented developers than I can count. I kept making excuses for her because she was there from the beginning." He paused. "You didn't create this situation. You just forced me to finally deal with it. Still feels like I caused problems. You caused the right kind of problems, the kind that expose what's broken so it can be fixed." His eyes held hers. "The company will be better without her. I should have done it years ago." Emma pulled her knees to her chest, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "Can I ask you something? Earlier, you said you've been lonely in a crowded office. What did you mean?" James was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "When you build something from nothing, people start treating you differently. They see the success, not the person. Every conversation becomes strategic. What can they get from me? What do I need from them? It's exhausting." He looked at her, his blue eyes intense in the dim light. "But you've never done that. From day one, even when you were trying to be professional, you saw me. Not the CEO, not the company. Just me. Is that why you hired me? Because I saw you? No. I hired you because you're talented and brave and exactly what this company needed." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture intimate and gentle. "But it's why I started falling for you." Emma's breath caught. "Started?" "I'm well past starting at this point." His hand remained on her cheek, thumb brushing her skin. "Emma, I know this is complicated. I know there are a dozen reasons we should keep this professional. But I meant what I said earlier. When you're ready, I want to see where this goes." "I'm ready," Emma whispered. "I've been ready since you laughed at my raccoon story." James smiled, and then he was kissing her, soft and questioning at first, then deeper when she responded. Emma melted into him, her hands finding their way to his hair as 10 weeks of tension and wanting finally broke free. He tasted like Cuban coffee and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "I should probably take you on that date before we do more of that." "Probably," Emma agreed, though she made no move to create distance between them. "Where would you take me?" "There's a little Italian place in Queen Anne with a view of the city. Or we could go to the Seattle Art Museum, or—" He paused, smiling sheepishly. "We could order pizza and stay here and talk until dawn. Honestly, I don't care where we go, as long as I'm with you." "The CEO of a tech company wants to eat pizza in my basement apartment. The man who's falling in love with you wants to be wherever you are," he corrected softly. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not? It's true. Because it makes me feel things I didn't think I'd ever get to feel. Like maybe I'm not invisible anymore. Like maybe showing up barefoot and broken was exactly what I needed to do to find—" She gestured between them. "This." James pulled her closer, and Emma rested her head on his shoulder, fitting perfectly against him. Outside, Seattle's rain continued its endless percussion. Inside this tiny basement apartment, with its peeling paint and questionable plumbing, Emma felt more at home than she had in years. "So what happens on Monday?" she asked. "When we go back to work and everyone knows Rachel was fired for trying to frame me?" "We deal with it together. There will be gossip, probably more accusations about favoritism. HR will want to document everything properly. It won't be easy." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "But Emma, I'm not going to hide how I feel about you. If that means we have to be extra transparent about work decisions, fine. If it means you report to someone else, we'll figure it out. But I'm done pretending you're just another employee. People will say you're making a mistake. Let them. You're the best mistake I've ever made." He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. "But I need you to be sure. Dating your boss is complicated. There will be people who assume you're getting special treatment, who question every promotion or project you're given. I can protect you from a lot of things, but I can't protect you from that." Emma thought about it, really thought about it. The risks, the complications, the gossip. Then she thought about the alternative. walking away from this connection, from the man who'd seen her at her most vulnerable and chosen her anyway. "I'm sure," she said firmly, "I didn't come here to play it safe. I came here barefoot and desperate, and I'm not about to start being careful now." James laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. "God, I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Emma's heart stopped, then started again at triple speed. "Do you love me?" James blinked, as if surprised by his own admission. "Yes, I really do. I know it's fast and probably too soon to say it, but I—" Emma kissed him, cutting off his words. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. "I love you too, which is insane because 3 weeks ago you were just the terrifying CEO who probably thought I was homeless. I never thought you were homeless. Waterlogged, yes. Homeless, no." They talked until 3 in the morning, sharing stories and dreams and fears. James told her about the pressure of maintaining his father's legacy, about panic attacks he'd hidden from everyone, about the loneliness of success. Emma told him about her mother's struggle, about the community college professors who'd believed in her, about teaching herself to code in the public library because she couldn't afford internet at home. When James finally left, with the promise to return Sunday for that proper date, Emma lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, feeling like her entire life had shifted on its axis. She'd come to Seattle with nothing but a broken pair of shoes and a desperate hope. Now she had a career, a man she loved, and a future that felt possible instead of terrifying. Monday would bring new challenges. There would be gossip and judgment and complications they couldn't foresee. But for now, in the quiet aftermath of the storm, Emma let herself believe in happy endings, even the messy, complicated, beautifully imperfect ones, especially those. Barefoot Dreams in Seattle. Chapter 7. New Beginnings. 6 months later, Emma stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new apartment in Capitol Hill, watching the Seattle rain paint abstract patterns on the glass. The Space Needle glowed in the distance, and Elliott Bay reflected the city lights like scattered diamonds. So much had changed since that first Barefoot interview. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Ready for tonight? You're going to kill it." Tonight was the company's annual gala, where James would announce the promotion of several employees. Emma's promotion to senior developer was among them, a decision that had gone through 3 levels of approval and been reviewed by an independent HR consultant to ensure there was no favoritism involved. She'd earned it through late nights, innovative solutions and code that had saved the company over $1 million in infrastructure costs. But it had been hard. James hadn't lied about that. The first month after they'd gone public with their relationship had been brutal. Whispers in the break room, pointed looks during meetings, anonymous complaints to HR about preferential treatment. Emma had cried more than once, questioning whether love was worth the constant scrutiny. James had been her anchor through it all. He'd implemented strict protocols. Emma reported directly to Marcus now, not to James. All her performance reviews were conducted by independent managers. Every project assignment was documented and justified. They'd bent over backwards to maintain professional integrity, and slowly, grudgingly, people had started to see that Emma's success had nothing to do with who she was dating and everything to do with who she was. The doorbell rang. Emma opened it to find James standing there in a tuxedo, holding a bouquet of flowers that matched the succulent he'd given her on her first day, which still sat on her desk at work, thriving despite her occasionally forgetting to water it. "So you look beautiful," James said, his eyes traveling over her emerald green dress, the first truly nice thing she'd bought herself with her increased salary. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Emma took the flowers, breathing in their scent. "Though I kind of miss the polo shirt from the tech summit. I still have it. I could change if you want the full nostalgic experience." "Don't you dare. We're already running late because someone insisted on picking me up instead of meeting there." "It's our first official public event as a couple," James said, offering his arm. "I'm picking you up properly, that was the deal." The gala was held at the Columbia Tower Club, with panoramic views of Seattle spread out below. Emma felt her stomach flutter with nerves as they entered. This was different from the office. This was the entire Seattle tech community, investors, clients, people who would judge not just her relationship, but her worthiness to be here at all. James squeezed her hand. "Hey, you belong here, remember that." Marcus and Sarah found them immediately, both grinning like conspirators. "There's the power couple," Marcus teased. How does it feel to be Seattle's tech world's favorite love story? Terrifying, Emma admitted, but also kind of amazing. You two are relationship goals, Sarah said. Seriously, you went from Barefoot disaster to senior developer in 6 months while dating the CEO. If that's not a modern fairy tale, I don't know what is. The evening unfolded like a dream. James gave a speech about innovation and taking risks, his eyes finding Emma's in the crowd when he talked about bringing in fresh perspectives that challenge our assumptions. When he announced her promotion, the applause was genuine. Emma had won over enough people through sheer competence that even the skeptics had to acknowledge her talent. But the best moment came later, when they stood on the outdoor terrace, rain misting around them as the city sparkled below. "I have something for you," James said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Emma's heart stopped. "James, if that's what I think it is, it's not a ring," he said quickly, laughing at her expression. "I mean, not yet. We've only been together 6 months. I'm not that impulsive." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a tiny shoe charm. "I had it made. It's supposed to be funny, but also a reminder." A reminder of what? That the best things in life happen when you show up, even when everything's falling apart, when you're brave enough to be real instead of perfect. He fastened it around her neck, his fingers gentle on her skin. "You taught me that, Emma. You taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness. It's the only way to really live." Emma touched the tiny shoe, feeling tears threaten her carefully applied makeup. "I can't believe you made a sentimental gift out of the most embarrassing moment of my life." "It wasn't embarrassing. It was the moment my life changed." James pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Emma Carter, you walked into my office with muddy feet and a speech about raccoons, and somehow you made me remember what it felt like to hope again, to feel again, to believe that success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with." "Are you getting sappy on me, Mitchell?" "Completely, disgustingly sappy." He kissed her forehead. "And I don't care who sees it." As if on cue, rain began to fall harder, forcing other guests inside. But Emma and James stayed on the terrace, dancing slowly to music that drifted through the open doors, getting wet and not caring at all. "You know what I realized?" Emma said, resting her head against his chest. "That first day I was so focused on what I'd lost, my shoes, my dignity, any chance of making a good impression. But really I'd found everything I needed." "A job?" "No. Well, yes. But more than that." She looked up at him. "I found someone who saw past the mess to what I could be, someone who believed in me before I believed in myself, someone who made me feel like showing up broken and honest was better than showing up perfect and fake." James's eyes were suspiciously bright. "You're going to make me cry at my own company gala." "Good. Then we'll match." They kissed in the rain, surrounded by the glittering lights of Seattle, while inside the gala continued without them. It was imperfect and messy, and probably someone was taking pictures that would end up on social media, but Emma didn't care. This was her life now. Complicated, public, scrutinized, but also full of love and possibility and the kind of happiness she'd stopped believing existed. Later, as they drove through the rain-soaked streets back to Emma's apartment, or our apartment as James had started calling it, since he spent most nights there, despite having a penthouse downtown, Emma thought about the journey that had brought her here. She'd arrived in Seattle with nothing, less than nothing, broke, alone, desperate, and quite literally shoeless. She'd expected to scrape by, to fight for every inch of respect, to prove herself to people who didn't want to see her succeed. Instead, she'd found a man who saw her, really saw her, who valued her authenticity over her polish, her courage over her credentials, her heart over her resume. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, glancing over at her. "About how I need to write a thank you note to whatever cosmic force made my shoes fall apart that day." James laughed. "I'm pretty sure that was just poor quality superglue, not cosmic intervention. Either way, best disaster of my life." When they reached her building, which James kept threatening to buy just so he could fix all the things that were broken, Emma turned to him before getting out of the car. "James Mitchell, I love you. And not because you're the CEO, or because you gave me a job, or because you're unfairly good-looking in a tuxedo. I love you because you laugh at my raccoon stories, because you bring me coffee when I'm stressed, because you believe in me even when I don't believe in myself. She touched the tiny shoe necklace. Because you turned my worst day into the beginning of my best life. Emma Carter, James said, his voice thick with emotion. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You walked into my office and reminded me what it means to be human, to take risks, to let someone in. He cupped her face in his hands. And someday, not today, but someday soon, I'm going to give you an actual ring instead of a shoe necklace. And I'm going to ask you to spend the rest of your life reminding me why showing up barefoot is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. Is that a proposal preview? Consider it a trailer for coming attractions. Emma kissed him, tasting rain and promise and the sweet certainty that sometimes the universe conspires to put you exactly where you need to be, even if it takes a broken bus, lost shoes, and a CEO with kind eyes to get you there. As they walked into her building together, Emma looked back at the rain-soaked Seattle streets and smiled. This city had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately given her everything she'd been searching for. She'd arrived barefoot and broken. She was leaving. No, not leaving. Staying. Building. Growing. With shoes, yes, but more importantly, with love, purpose, and a future that felt infinite with possibility. And if Seattle's rain wanted to take credit for bringing them together, well, Emma was happy to let it. After all, some storms don't destroy. Some storms deliver you exactly where you belong, even if you have to arrive barefoot to find your way home.